Welcome to the latest addition to the Compliance Podcast Network, the podcast 10 for 10, which brings you the week's top 10 compliance stories curated together in one podcast each week. Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, brings you the compliance professional stories you need to be aware of at the end of your busy week. Sit back and in 10 minutes, hear about the stories every compliance professional should be aware of. Every Saturday, 10 for 10 highlights the most important news, insights, and analysis for the compliance professional, all curated by the voice of compliance, Tom Fox. Get your weekly filling of compliance stories with 10 for 10. Hosted by Tom Fox. 10 for 10 is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. First, a word from the sponsor of the Compliance Podcast Network for this month, Ethico.
In the intricate world of ethics and compliance, each second is precious, and slow case closures are more than just delays, they're missed opportunities. Enter Ethico. Our solution revolutionizes case management, cutting closure times in half and turning every challenge into a chance for improvement. Imagine a workspace where efficiency and compliance coexist harmoniously. Don't just dream of faster resolutions, make it your reality. Visit ethico.com/CPN today to book a demo and dive into our exclusive white paper by Tom Fox, the ROI of Compliance, and to try our free ROI calculator. Empower your team with the tools they deserve.
Today we look at stories for the week ending March 16, 2024. Our first story comes to us from the Wall Street Journal, the first of several stories from the journal this week. This one comes from the Risk and Compliance Journal, Mingy Sun reporting that the Swiss bank EFG has agreed to pay $3.7 million to settle allegations that it violated U.S. sanctions by holding and investing securities on behalf of blacklisted individuals. Between 2014 and 2018, EFG allegedly processed some 686 securities transactions for customers in Cuba and for a Chinese national blacklisted for foreign narcotics trafficking, said OFAC. In all, the unlawful total transactions amounted to $30.4 million. Our next story from the Wall Street Journal, also coming to us from the Risk and Compliance Journal, report by David Smagala, reports about the Department of Justice and its announcement that it would start a whistleblower bounty program, and to flesh out its program, it will begin a 90-day policy sprint. This policy sprint was announced by Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, and she said that she can only share so many details of it right now because the policy sprint is to gather information, to consult with stakeholders, and to design a thoughtful and well-informed program. Those remarks were by Nicole Argentaria at the ABA White Collar Conference. He said one goal of the program is to help the Justice Department uncover companies' involvement in foreign bribery plots that don't fall under the jurisdiction of the SEC and hence are not under the SEC whistleblower program. Our next story comes to us from Reuters, which reports that JPMorgan was fined nearly $350 million for adequate trading by a pair of banking regulators over inadequate program internal to the firm to monitor firm and client trading activities for market misconduct. The fine, the Fed and the OCC, or the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, said the misconduct occurred between 2014 and 2023. In a separate announcement, the OCC said JPMorgan failed to properly monitor billions of trades across 30 global trading venues. A bank spokesman said the firm had self-identified the issue and is working to remediate and address the matter and does not expect any disruption of existing client services. Additionally, there was no evidence of employee misconduct or harm to clients, although, of course, that's not the standard. Next up, a very interesting announcement from the U.S. Department of State around really why corruption or the invidiousness of corruption. And it's a press release entitled Promoting Accountability for Corruption That Fuels South Sudan's Conflict. This press announcement indicates that the Department of State is imposing visa restrictions on multiple individuals in South Sudan for undermining or impeding sustainable peace by engaging in corruption. This really points directly to why corruption leads to terrorism. And the final story, this next story, comes to us from The Guardian. And I previously reported about 2 British individuals who were found not guilty for allegedly bribing Saudi Arabian officials. Well, it turns out that the MOD was paying millions of dollars into a Saudi account starting around the time of the BAE corruption scandal. Listeners may recall that after the SFO started investigating corruption around BAE and its payments to Saudi Arabia, the UK government shut down that investigation, severely damaging the reputation of Tony Blair for doing so. But it turns out that the documents said they needed to keep the Saudis on side after revelations about a notorious deal, and displeasing key Saudis was something they did not want to do when it came to air sales. Our next story comes once again from the Wall Street Journal, but it comes from a little bit different angle about an article of how and why Robert Oppenheimer was such a great leader. They listed 4 reasons. Number 1, Oppenheimer the recruiter. Number 2, Oppenheimer the communicator. Number 3, Oppenheimer the collaborator. And number 4, Oppenheimer the effective actor. So take a look at this article. There's a lot in here for the compliance professional to unpack. It's a fun article. Obviously, Oppenheimer did very well at the Oscars, so we're thinking about him a lot more than we could have been. Our next story comes to us from the BBC, and it's really a melancholy story, and it's the first of 2 stories about Boeing. And a Boeing employee, John Barnett, who was a 30-year employee before retiring in 2017 and became a major whistleblower, particularly around the 737 MAX, was found dead. It's speculated at this point that he died from suicide. He was in the middle of depositions around his allegations, and he was found dead in a hotel room. And it really points up the mental health issues that many whistleblowers face when they do step forward and whistleblow. So sadness in John Barnett, and really a shout out to mental health resources for those whistleblowers who find themselves in that sort of trouble. Next up from Reuters, the number 2 in the Treasury Department, Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo, urged South Africa to step up its battle in corruption. He's saying work could help boost job creation in a country facing unemployment of 43% for those under 35. Once again, showing the invidiousness of corruption. Many of those people turned to crime and later terrorism. He highlighted the need for increased anti-corruption efforts, continue to accelerate South Africa's just transition to renewable energy. So if you wonder why it's in the security interest of the United States to fight corruption, that is clearly one reason. Next up, Corruption the Play, an off-Broadway production around the former News of the Day and their phone hacking scandal, which destroyed or caused Rupert Murdoch a huge embarrassment. So we not only have Oppenheimer, the biography, but we have Corruption the Play. And our final story is that security tapes which showed the work on the door which blew out on the Alaskan Airlines by Boeing employees has somehow been overridden. Gee, imagine that. As I mentioned at the start of this podcast, this month's sponsor for the entire Compliance Podcast Network is Ethico. Have you ever wondered how to show the ROI of your compliance program? Have you struggled with the budgeting process, getting the funds you want for your compliance program? Well, I've partnered with Ethico to put together a white paper on the ROI of compliance, which shows you not only how to demonstrate ROI, but also how to speak finance when you're sitting across from the CFO with your budget proposals. Check out the website, and get the white paper. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of 10 for 10. I hope you will check out the newest podcast in the Compliance Podcast Network, the Compliance Tip of the Day. In Compliance Tip of the Day, I give a 5 to 8 minute summary of one tip that you can integrate into your compliance program or put together for greater compliance program efficiency.